Hello everyone, my name is John Lewandowski and I'm going to talk about the reliability of metallic parts. These will be conducted in the Advanced Manufacturing and Mechanical Reliability Center, the AMMRC, and the website's shown here and you can check more details at your leisure. I direct this center and it also has in it a co-director, Chris Tuma, and Dr. Janet Gabor. So the areas that we currently have funding in the AMMRC, this is direct funding that I have, covers two primary areas that are related to this MDS-Rely. There's lots of work ongoing right now in additive manufacturing from a number of different agencies and a number of different material systems, as you can see, predominantly looking at the mechanical reliability and how the processing affects that. In addition to that, we have separate grants on the structural reliability of different materials, either ships, alloys that are used in ships, or aerospace alloys. The names besides each of these are either staff or graduate students that are in the lab. And we also have undergraduate students that participate, as you can see listed, either in classes or separately supported. Now, depending on the kind of projects that are ongoing here, we can use sizes of equipment that are either tabletop size at the top right or much bigger equipment. And so we can test things down to the diameter of your hair or smaller, as well as things that are the size of your hand or bigger. If I were to look at, in particular, the reliability of metallic parts in the additive manufacturing area, you could imagine a number of different parts. One of the areas that we've gotten involved with is jet engine components, like materials for blades, as shown here. In this particular case, depending on the additive technique that you use, there are different power velocity regimes. And as you can imagine, depending where you are in this power velocity regime, you could get very different microstructures, properties, and defect densities. And so in this case, the example on the bottom left is a tall build of titanium 6 aluminum 4 vanadium. It's 100 millimeters tall. And what we see is significant property variation along the length of the build. We also see from tomography on that same exact sample significant differences in the defect density. And more detail, also differences of the microstructure as you go from the bottom to the top of the build. And so in these cases, these were evaluated in our test laboratories, and we were looking at the mechanical reliability. In that case, you could imagine us doing similar things on projects that may be of interest to you. Here's a specific example of a blade that was actually printed in a number of different machines out of Ti 6-4. These are great student projects because in this case, we can section the blades in all kinds of different orientations, and then look at the microstructure, which is shown here, and in particular, what kind of defects might exist. This can be done on any material system or in any kind of structure, and we're well suited to do that. If I transition to environmental effects, we're also looking at how does the environment affect the material behavior. And we're looking at both materials and structures and trying to look at accelerated testing techniques to examine this. And so you could ask the general question, how do or will materials and structures change after some extended service history? The example that I'm showing here, although we've worked on others, is to look at the mechanical reliability of parts of a Navy ship that was decommissioned after 42 years of service. And so in this particular case, we actually got components, shown here, plates from this actual ship after it was decommissioned after 42 years. And we're also developing accelerated testing techniques to examine environmental effects that we might do laboratory exposures and see how those affect and compare to this service composure. And so that's this component. How do accelerated tests and exposures compare to service exposures? In this case, we've also done fracture experiments, and what I'm showing here is a movie, and you are looking at the fracture surface of something that was tested in a sodium chloride solution. On the left-hand side, we have done tomography as a function of distance, and we're looking at the details of these splits on the surface. The other thing that we're doing, as I indicated with regards to the laboratory exposures, and this figure was in the summary document, we're looking at regimes of where laboratory exposures cause fracture and problems and where they don't. And so anywhere you see colors, you see that materials thermally exposed under those conditions will exhibit extreme stress corrosion cracking. So at high temperatures, it doesn't take very long for this to happen. At lower temperatures, it takes longer. But the exposure of this ship and other things like it will have exposures out to 60°C, even for many years. So let me finish with how does the data analytics present itself here? In the additive manufacturing community, as I alluded to before, if you look at the power velocity regimes of any additive process, there is a wide range of powers and velocities, even within the green region here. And so one of the students that has taken Professor French's class has taken her data, which was done on a stainless steel, and looked at, what's affecting the properties. And this first cut was looking at power and speed. How does it affect the hardness, which would correlate with the strength? How is that affected by X, Y, and Z in the build, and how many builds per plate? And through that analysis, preliminary work now, hardness was very strongly negatively correlated with height, meaning the material got softer as the build got taller. And that correlates pretty well with some of the other things we've seen, both with regards to the microstructure and the properties. Hardness versus power also had a slightly positive trend in this case. On the environmental effects side, there's lots of variables here. As I showed before, when we expose these in the laboratory, we get different regimes where the material will crack. And so this is an ongoing student's project where he's looking at data analytics analysis for environmental effects on this material. So the input variables here are the material chemistry, magnesium content. What's the starting microstructure look like? What are the thermal exposure details, time and temperature? And then how does stress state, strain rate, and test temperature affect this? We can do tests fast or slow. We can do notched or cracked samples, and the environment is certainly important. And that data analytics will be coming available shortly. Thank you.